Let's do that. All right, Bruce, I think we had you up first, but just any updates that you might have.
I've got a few quick things that we can update on. We did add Wi-Fi to the football field with the intention of being able to produce a much better streaming product for graduation this year. We put it on the outside of South School and on the press box at the football stadium itself, so we should have some much better coverage than what we've had in the past. We've been trying to stream with a cellular connection, and we were even using 2 different cellular connections and merging them together with a lot of technology to try to win the war that way as well. But with so many people in the audience having a phone and doing Facebook Live and everything else, it really hits that cell tower. So therefore, we needed to just go a different route, and we've established Wi-Fi and got that up and running a week ago or so, and everything's going great there. We just started NUIA testing, so we're helping out with all the assessments in the schools at this point. And the only other thing that's really gone on is we were able to purchase new print servers for each building. They were in the budget for next year, but we were able to do it early this year instead to take it out of next year's budget, and we're installing new print servers in each building. I think we got 2 of them done today. And that should bring that to be a much more stable and responsive environment. Other than that, I'm all set.
Thanks so much. That sounds wonderful.
I got a question though. So, Bruce, how do we successfully lock down the iPads so that they are only educational devices versus anything else? Like, how do we,
So we've already done that. Short
there ways
of the
students
web
get around it,
browser
though?
itself.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the students don't have access to the App Store. So the only apps that they have, and this has been this way since the onset of iPads, the only apps that they have are apps that teachers have requested. Those apps are put into the self-service portal, and then students can install only from the self-service portal. Now, the web browser itself, we have URL blocking that we do, but that's certainly a constant battle. You can't keep pace with all the different web pages as they show up and what they find, and different games and things like that. But we put a pretty good effort, and we also subscribe to 2 other lists of URL blocking for educational purposes that we use other services to help populate that list to stay ahead of that curve as much as we can. But that one is a tough one. The web browser is always going to be tough.
Okay. So the way you do it is like you learn of a URL that they're utilizing for gaming, and then you go in and block it.
Correct.
Then another one, and then another one, and another one.
Absolutely. The game one will never win that war. There's just so many gaming websites that have whatever small little game on it. That one, we do our best. We try to get what's popular.
Yep. Okay, that was I was just wondering about in terms of, whether or not gaming could be stopped. And your answer is exactly what I figured. I know we don't have apps, but I figured, web browsing, and you guys do your best you can to stay ahead of it, but still it's extremely hard to do.
So the only other alternative there would be, which would be even worse,
Yep.
would be to flip that model and say all websites are blocked unless somebody requests a website to be open. And that would just really stop people's ability to expand and become creative. Otherwise, any
Right.
new website they found would have to be added, and that one just really wouldn't work.
Yep. And you said there are a couple of services that you subscribe to that give you URLs of gaming.
Yes, so
Mhm.
Apple has one and
Yep.
Network Maine has one.
Oh.
And both of those lists are maintained by those entities, so they're constantly adding as well. And then
Okay.
we have our own list that we add to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just want to double check on that.
Sure.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, Steph, back to you.
Right, okay. Lots of exciting curriculum things. We have Jesse here who's going to share a little bit about some textbooks for the high school. Some of these aren't necessarily brand new. They're updated versions of textbooks or materials that we have been using. So I'll have him talk about that in just a moment, but I'll also frame the conversation because I know I was asked the question about process. Typically, a curriculum review process takes about a year. And if anything is piloted, it can take 2 years. Normally, and I know I've shared a lot with this group about what we're piloting in K-5, a K-5, maybe even up through K-8 process looks a little bit different from the high school. And the biggest reason for that is because our high school teachers are all content area specialists. They're all content area experts. Whereas in K-8, if somebody has a K-8 generalist certification, they might not necessarily have they might have a qualification in what they're teaching, but it's not a 712 certification. We have a few teachers in the middle school that have that level of a certification that might teach 7th or 8th grade. But otherwise, they would be considered a generalist, and they're usually teaching something that's to their strength. So to ensure that we have quality materials, usually I oversee program material review, selection, and piloting at the K-8 level. And at the high school level, typically there are conversations that are happening within content area groups that are meeting much more frequently than how often I'm able to get over there. So Jesse has overseen a process this year where he has gathered input and feedback from the groups about how best to move forward with a couple of outdated textbook materials. So Jesse, do you want to just give a little overview of what those materials are?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start, I think, with the most straightforward one, which is our health textbook sets. Our current textbooks are from 2007, which is, about as old as many of our students. So it really omits a lot of the current health topics and most current research that exists. So it's beyond time to update the textbooks to make sure that we are providing the most up-to-date information for our students with those. So it'd be the same textbook that we're currently using, just a newer version of that Glencoe health book. And most textbooks now have some type of online component that goes along with that too. There's some level of customization with that as well, to make it a little bit more accessible and user-friendly as far as what resources are available on the iPad as well. The next one is our current textbook for our AP Calc class is outdated because it doesn't include all the units that are covered in the current AP test. So there's 2 units that aren't included in our current textbook. So that feels like it's time to update those. So, obviously a smaller number of textbooks there, but to make sure that we have an accurate resource to help support our students who are taking calc, to make sure that they can access all that material. So we took some time, looked through a couple of different resources online. The internet's great now because we don't always have to wait for things to come in the mail and get a hold of people on the phone. There's a number of resources available. And we have a 1-year teacher that has taught AP Calc for a number of years back in New York. So she weighed in with Bree Coburn, our teacher who's currently teaching this class right now. And they looked through all the different resources and felt like the calculus for the AP course, and I think Steph just put a link the chat box for that. But that is offered by Bedford, Freeman, and Worth that aligns to the AP course would be the best choice to support our students through that. And then the third textbook we're looking to make a change with is we don't really have enough. We only have a handful of our world history textbooks left because we had realigned some of our curriculum resources with the middle school over the past couple of years, where they were teaching primarily the world and ancient history aspects, and we were focusing more on the U.S. history piece. We found the need to bring that world history piece back into the high school and make some additional adjustments to that. So over time, textbooks wear and tear, going missing, being outdated, and need to update those. We've done some research and we've found this great textbook that's offered through National Geographic. That's a world history and great civilizations textbook. Super user-friendly, lots of great graphics, lots of great material to use as a supplemental resource to be able to guide the teacher through instruction in that course. Questions?
I do like, so we've had, the devices now for a long time, and there was all the predictions, I don't know, a decade ago, whatever, that textbooks would go to online or, into the iPad and all this stuff. But I'm guessing it's just not the case, that we still need to buy paper hardback textbooks.
Sometimes you just can't beat a textbook. You don't have to worry about bugs coming up, or when everything's all on one device, or sometimes it's just that textbook piece is a little bit more user friendly, especially because a lot more homework and the work that the kids are doing are on the iPad as well. So to have a physical book and then the iPad right there, it allows them to be a little bit more nimble with the work instead of clicking through as many windows and those pieces as well. But
Yeah.
many of them have supplements. So the textbook is one piece, but then there's supplements that they can go further, even like with some science labs, we can do some things that we haven't been able to do in the past. So I think what we found in a lot of places is a textbook is good to be a textbook, but those things that we can do in addition to the textbook with technology has become really great.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just sort of like a fascination, because like the same thing with like novels. People are saying, oh, printed novels won't be a big thing anymore because we'll just get them all on our, tablets. It's not the case. People love books. You have to hold the book, So if it's a better experience for students to have a book, then it is. We just have years of evidence that tells us one way or the other. So
I
it's just
think another component there is the industry knows that it changes their revenue stream if they convert to digital versus analog. So by embracing both, they in sense have added to their revenue stream by adding the digital component, but still maintaining the analog component.
Okay. Yeah.
And not to mention the management piece that you mentioned before, Lauren. If a kid's got a textbook out, we don't have to worry about them being on a screen that they're not supposed to be on because they only got one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's fascinating to watch it. It really is.
Yeah.
A book doesn't try to sell me an air fryer either.
It doesn't.
Or ping
That's
at me.
next.
Or ping at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Justin, you mentioned the first textbook you was for health class, is that right? Did I get
Correct.
that? Have you reviewed that content to see if some of the research over the last 17 years or so since the last textbook was published, which essentially coincides with the advent of the iPhone, if any of that content has changed, in particular dealing with heightened anxiety, depression, social isolation, all the things that we're seeing because of technology? Are those issues addressed in the textbook? And if not, how can we address it with the students in the curriculum?
I don't recall whether or not those factors are included in there, but I know it does include a lot of those kind of supplemental pieces as well that feed into the anxiety, increased dependence on tobacco due to vaping and those pieces as well. Just pulling it up and screening over, access to drugs and opioids and, the impact of that within family structures and things like that. It does have cyberbullying and privacy and online harassment and some of those other pieces It doesn't outline, and like I said, I don't really recall how much it goes into the correlation between mental health and that, but that's something I know that we talk about a lot, and that's definitely something that, you know, we can have further conversations with, you know, the health professionals in the building to talk about how they're talking about that with their kids.
Yeah,
It
I would
does
just,
have increased,
sorry.
it does have increased awareness of student social emotional health. I don't know that it draws a direct parallel to technology, because I think that's one theory. But it's, I mean, there is an increased emphasis on mental health and social emotional skills than there was in the 2007 edition.
Yeah, I would just like to make sure that we're giving that the proper time and space in the program. I'm sure all of us agree that, you know, a lot of the issues that we're seeing, not just in our district, but across the globe right now, have to do with, well, whether it's technology or other social emotional issues. And it seems like such an important foundational part of our curriculum that could really help in all other aspects of the curriculum. So if the textbook falls short of that or needs to be augmented, I hope that whoever is implementing the curriculum has enough bandwidth and enough you know, agency to really make sure that those conversations are happening in the classes, and that students are at least having an open forum to discuss issues as they arise related to technology or related to some of those other heightened anxiety and depression and other things that we're seeing, you know, in our students these days.
I also have a question. Does the new textbook cover the topics of LGBTQ plus gender issues? I hope it does. And if not, what are we going to do about that? Because that's not something that should be ignored. It's a level of, it's part of the level of anxiety some of our students go through. Is
And
gender.
it doesn't outline that in the piece I have in front of me, and I don't have the new textbook right in front of me to flip through, but I can tell you, Carol, that, you know, I'm in agreement, and I think that just like a number of the social emotional things, you know, are us teaching tolerance and supporting all of our students through all the different pieces and not just in health class. You know, our GSTA right now is planning some pride events to celebrate Pride Month in June. You know, we really work hard to make sure that we have an inclusive and supportive environment from, you know, every moment that we're in school, and have those difficult conversations and make sure that those are included in history classes and just like, you know, any other relevant topic, along with health classes and, you know, English classes, and, you know, it exists everywhere.
Yeah, I think we missed the boat, however, if it's not covered in health classes, because it's a health issue before it is anything else.
Yeah,
So-
and I know that they do cover that currently, even with the old textbook. So
Yeah,
like I said,
and
I can't speak to
this-
what degree in the new one, but
Yeah, this new textbook does have an optional human sexuality module included.
Optional. We won't make it optional though, right?
Well, that's how it's outlined in what's included in the materials.
And I think we'll probably have some blowback from some corners of the community, but so be it. You know, these kids are kids, and we love all our kids equally, and they should be treated that way. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other questions for Jesse?
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
yeah, thank you
Go
all.
anywhere.
You're stuck with me, sorry.
That's well said, Carol. That's well said. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks, Jesse.
All right,
I think
thank you all.
we can release you from the meeting for the evening.
Well,
Into the
well,
wild
thank
you
you very
go.
much. I'm gonna take advantage of the time between rains, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
good idea.
absolutely.
I hope you all
Thanks,
get to as well. Thank you.
Yes.
See ya.
So the other curriculum related component that I wanted to bring to your attention tonight is our brand new Oceanside Middle School program. It is an alternative education program. It's really intended to be a therapeutic approach for students who have had a very difficult time engaging in school this year, and finding a level of motivation, either just to come to school in general, which I'll share a couple of patterns with you, and just, a few broad looks at some of the issues that are surrounding this particular group. Or some have had attendance, not great attendance, but not super poor attendance either, but have really struggled to just engage in what school currently looks like. It's been a struggle to go to classes. Sometimes it's not a struggle to go to classes in the morning, but as soon as lunchtime hits, suddenly it's a struggle to go to classes in the afternoon, and just really being able to maintain our behavior expectations in the middle school. So I can't remember how much I've shared with you or when the last time was that I sort of shared the big picture, but a lot has happened in recent weeks. Colden has put in tremendous efforts, and really all credit for this idea and this plan goes to Colden. I have done a lot of legwork. I have done a lot of physical work to get this space ready. But really the brainchild of this has been Colden. And I actually think the conversation initially started last year when Colden was already noticing there are some kids that this school just is not working for. And I think we probably tried for a little too long to make a few square pegs try to fit into a round hole. Although we have an alternative program currently at the middle school, it is run out of a locker room. It doesn't have a lot of bright space and windows. It's very small. Because the space is small, it's really limited the number of students that we can put in that space. So trying to maintain a level of making sure that we have space for the students and not have the program be too chaotic, we really limited access to that current alternative education program. We've actually left that program alone. There are still 3 students that are in that program that are experiencing success. They're going to some regular classes, but they have that space as a home base. They have a wonderful relationship with an ed tech who is currently helping to oversee their daily routines. That's working well. We have moved a couple of students out of that program and into this new therapeutic program. And at the same time, we've taken a really close look at attendance, behavior, and needed supports for others who are in that building. And we have also moved a group of students from that population over to our new therapeutic program as well. So currently we have 11 students who are in this program. The program is not at the middle school. It's right next door to the middle school in the Thomaston town office. We are using our LD 756 funding to rent a space that used to be in the Laura Libby School. It's like a classroom and a half. It's a very large space, lots of windows. We have access to bathrooms. We have a hallway space and we have an office space, which I'm currently working out of for the morning part of my job until I'm in the afternoon part of my job. And the space, I meant to put pictures together to show you guys. I'll make a point to do that, maybe even for the board meeting on Wednesday. But the space wasn't in use. It has not been in use since it was Laura Libby School. So we had a lot of work to do going into opening the program. And we were approved last Monday evening. So the space wasn't touched until Tuesday morning. So we worked on a lease. We worked on a deed agreement to ensure that we could use the space because there was a former deed agreement that said that the space would not be used as a school. It's not currently being used as a school. It's being used as a classroom space. The former deed agreement was more specific to if somebody else was to come into that Thomaston municipal space and try to run like a charter school out of there. So we worked with our lawyers, we got the lease agreement worked out, we got the deed agreement worked out. Select board approved our use of that space last Monday night, and I went there on Tuesday with all my cleaning supplies. Thought I was going to be the only one there, cleaning and trying to get the space ready, but a bunch of people from the Thomaston town office showed up and helped. They cleared out the space. There were a couple, there was a wheelchair, a Christmas tree, a bunch of flooring. There's just some funky stuff in that space that they helped to clear out of the space. They helped to get the floors ready. The walls did not have paint on them, but they had some boards, so they helped to take the boards off of the walls so that the students could really just have a clean slate. And we brought in white paint so that when the students arrived on Wednesday, that was the first task. We're putting white paint on the wall to really have a brand new fresh start. So the space was cleared out, cleaned, and ready for students by Wednesday morning, and we invited our students over with their instructor. Lucas Brower has agreed to be the instructor for these final 2 months of the school year. He has worked for us for a couple of years in our Oceanside Middle School after school program. So we're really fortunate that he's willing to step up and take on additional hours to work with our kids and really be a mentor. He's, I've worked with him for 4 days now, and he is a very strong presence for the students, very supportive, but very clear. It makes his expectations very clear. And the goal right now, we're not doing a lot of academics at the moment, although I did have the kids do a little writing today. But the goal is to have high, clear expectations and hold students accountable to those expectations, and not in a consequence type of a way, but in a conversational, restorative way. And I've been really surprised at what they've been willing to step up to do, and really surprised by what they've been willing to share about themselves. I'm not a complete stranger because I've been at the middle school for quite a few weeks now, helping out and supporting where I can. But in terms of, chasing kids in and out of bathrooms and around the school is very different than being in a classroom with them and sitting down and getting to know them. So it's a work in progress. I think probably the most positive takeaways so far are we have 3 students who I don't think have shown up much at all to school this year. And all 3 of them have been in the program for the 4 days that the program has been running and have not missed a day yet. So that's 4 days in a row. I don't think any of those students have had even 2 consecutive days in a row, looking back at attendance. And I went through today and I gathered a whole bunch of data just to share a couple of pieces with you. So of those 3 students, one of them has 17.65% attendance rate for the year. One of them has 25% and one of them has 34%. So all 3 of those students significantly below even attending 50% of the time. Average attendance for these students is 56.8%. So, and so far, we haven't had students that haven't wanted to come to the program without having either an excused absence, or we did have one that started today, but that student was out on suspension and just finishing up a suspension before starting fresh today. So I mentioned our lowest attender was 17.65% for the school year. Our highest is 78.68. So none of these students have really been spending a lot of time in school. But like I mentioned at the beginning, we have students that avoid school, and then we have students that come to school but avoid class. So that was sort of on both ends of that spectrum. All of these students have dealt with a tremendous number of suspensions, and these include both in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. On average for these 11 students, it's been 11 times suspended this school year. So that's 11 separate events on average. The lowest for a student is 5 times being suspended this year, but that is also the same student that has had the lowest level of attendance. The highest, 19 instances of suspension for a student for this year. And then I also went through and looked at total number of days, either suspended through in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension on average for these students, 22 days, with the lowest being 11 school days of either in-school or out-of-school suspension, and the highest being 51. So thinking about that data and thinking about these individuals and their experience with school, right now, they all feel like they are getting a fresh start. They all recognize that this is an opportunity for them. This is a chance to be able to start fresh. And I believe that they all really want to take advantage of that in a really positive way. When I think about those suspensions, we know suspensions are not doing those students any favors. But we also are sort of stuck in the middle of ensuring the peace and usefulness of the school. So right now, this program really feels like we're not only giving something to these students because they really need to feel an investment in school. They need to feel like school is a positive experience. So we're trying to provide that to them, but we're also maintaining the peace and usefulness of the school. And when I checked in with Colden, I checked in with a few teachers as well, because I just was curious. Friday was only 3 behavior referrals, and one of them was sort of a misunderstanding. Colden said before that, a low day would be 8 behavior referrals. And none of the 3 that even went to the office were like high level behavior referrals. So that alone is certainly a positive indicator. And then talking to some of the staff over at the middle school, I have heard, this is not from everybody, I know that this is going to take time, but the past couple of days have been like night and day. So I feel really positive, like we're taking some steps forward. We're making an impact, hopefully, on these kids' lives by offering them this new opportunity.
Yeah, I just would say, Stephanie, then for you and Golden, everybody, it's just such a smart thing to do and a great thing to do. And I can see how it'd be beneficial for those students involved and for the rest of the student body. And I just do want to say that you've clearly gone way above and beyond the call of duty to go there and do the work that you've done, both in the middle school the past several weeks and like preparing the room, being a part of that. You know, that's just probably not in your job description. We want to thank you for that kind of effort. That is super, super great.
And the town of Thomaston.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've got a nice basket for them and I'm going to have the kids deliver it. I'm just waiting for the town manager to get back from, she's on vacation this week, but they've really been tremendous. I think they were a little skeptical at first, like, it was really a good idea. But it's seeing the excitement on the students' faces when they first walked into the space was really uplifting. And, you know, it wasn't perfect the first day. We certainly encountered some behaviors, but, you know, in 4 days, I'm seeing little increments of progress and trust building and increased level of respect. And that's what we're starting with. I know I've had people ask me, what does the curriculum look like? We're not there yet. We're working on, and I've been really upfront with the students, we're working on the habits for success, and I'm calling them habits for success, just like we do in all of our other schools. But those are the top priority. Perseverance. We're going to push through even when it gets hard. Responsibility and collaboration and communication. Those skills are what I really want the students to get out of this. And then sort of the overarching respect, like how do we build that and how do we gain that? And every morning, we start with a morning meeting and the kids share, and it's a little uncomfortable. So we're working on, how do we share and what do we share? What does that look like? Because a lot of them are friends, but they haven't really built this culture of talking to each other about how they feel. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see. But I did overhear one student this morning who was talking a little bit about respect doesn't always feel like something that this student gets from adults, and why that might be. And it was, it's just kind of interesting to hear their perspective and their take on, how they've ended up where they are.
I totally agree with everything Lauren said, and thank you again, Stephanie. And please, relay our thanks to Colden too for all the extra work. I'm curious what they do beyond the morning meeting. I'm sure that there are other, I know it's not a curriculum yet, but could you describe some of the other activities that the students are participating in at this point?
Yes. Let me share my screen real quick. And I actually just, this is Colden and Nadezhda, who is the social worker at the middle school. Nick Citriglia is the school counselor. Andrea Garver teaches literacy. She's the interventionist. Ryan Verrill is a math teacher, and Jacob Collins is a social studies teacher. They've all been collaborating and helping to develop this schedule. We haven't followed this schedule perfectly yet because the first 3 days primarily, last Wednesday was the first day, and we spent the morning getting to know each other, getting a little white paint on the walls. And then the students went to Herring Gut, because every Wednesday afternoon from 11:30 to 1:30, they're going to Herring Gut to do some hands-on learning, working with science. And sometimes they might go to local beaches and do some citizen science, like counting the green crabs and looking at invasive species. Every Friday afternoon, we did not do this last Friday, but starting this Friday, they're going to be rock climbing. Every Monday afternoon, and we did not do this today, partly because of the weather and also because of a transportation glitch, but going forward, every Monday afternoon, they're going to be at Mary Spring Gardens. And again, sort of a science and art-based curriculum through Mary Spring. Typical days, so this is what we're working on right now, and it's very much a work in progress, so none of this is quite set in stone, but it is starting with a circle check-in every morning and just working on that that skill of being able to share and talk and take turns and listen. 8:15 to 9:15 will be a different rotation of math and literacy. Both Ryan and Andrea will be with us on Mondays. Today they were not, because it was a late start, so it was a little funky today. We just did a lot of conversations, goal setting. I met with 3 students. I'm going to be meeting with all of them to set short-term goals, health-related goals, and then a long-term goal. And we had Molly Staples from the high school. She's met with you guys a couple of times. We had her come over and meet the kids and talk with the kids about maybe bringing in some adults from the community to talk about different career paths that the students might be interested in, just to give them something to think forward about. Mindful activity break from 9:15 to 9:30. 9:30 to 10:15 will be Jacob Collins coming over to work on social studies with the students. And that will be Tuesday and Thursday. Lucas, who is the instructor, and I will be coming up with activities for them to do. One of the things that we've agreed to as part of the rent or the lease agreement is that we could develop some murals, and with the approval of the town manager, once she sees the designs, we could put those murals up on the walls in that space. So right now the walls are white, but you'll see tomorrow, I'm getting tape measures tonight. We're going to add in a little bit of math and think about cost of paint, how much paint we would need, the space that needs to be covered, and potential design, just to really try to put any academic skills that we're doing right back into real world tasks. Nick Satriglia is, again, the school counselor. He's going to spend some time working with the group on various activities. They do go back to the middle school for lunch for 30 minutes. And then we're either at an afternoon community partner, Monday, again, Mary Spring, Wednesday's Herring Gut, Friday, rock climbing, or we've got some additional activity time. Downtime is not great. So again, we're really trying to work on what does that time look like? So another possibility, I saw Scott Browning on Friday when we were at the Midcoast School of Technology. And one of the things I would like to do, we have about 8 full weeks of school remaining. I would like to try to get students over to the Midcoast School of Technology once per week. I think they have about 8 programs that students could view, and they could view 1 per week. I would love to just get them into that building and see what's available over there. Cleanup is on here because we have a chore chart, and we've started talking about who does the sweeping and how do we sweep and what does it look like to clean a space, and having some of those conversations. So we've got time to clean up. It's been great seeing kids step up and say, we don't have to pull after the first day. We don't have to pull teeth. If we say who's going to refill the water, somebody refills the water. Who's going to empty the sink? Somebody's willing to empty the sink. And I didn't mention that part to you. We do not have a working sink. The Thomaston Town Office is planning to put one into the bathroom for us. The bathrooms just have stalls. So right now we have a 5-gallon refillable water jug with a pump on the top and a bucket to catch the water. So sort of like an old-fashioned pump sink. It's working great and they love it, but it adds a couple of extra chores right now. And then they end the day by walking back to the middle school with their instructor.
So like we've said, Stephanie, this is a terrific amount of investment of your time. And I'm guessing, so please correct me if I'm wrong or add to it, that you did this because you, John, Golden, whatever, you all figured something big has to happen at the middle school. I mean, I assume you invested this amount of time because you determined this is a big deal. It has to be addressed. It has to be changed. And I know, John, you made a couple other changes there too. But correct me if I'm wrong or add to that or expand on it. But
well, I know Colden was reaching out last year. I didn't have the resources to make anything drastic happen. I've been hoping we can get these modulars up quickly. But as with construction and anything that has to be approved by the DOE and then go to town meetings and go to planning boards, it takes time. And as this year started, recognizing that it's not going to happen right away and we're not likely to have the modulars this year. I mean, I think we realized that pretty early on in September. By November, Tim Carroll was calling a community-based meeting where the district attorney showed up, the DHHS personnel showed up, city council members, and I mean, certainly there were other police officers there as well, and Joseph Huffnagel from the landing place, and Valley Geiger was there, and that's where Valley mentioned LD 756, which I had never heard of before. But that was that grant funding that we went for 45% of the $1 million, and we got 40% of it. So that, I think for me, recognizing that we weren't going to have a space anytime soon, and we would need funding if we were going to be doing anything else, and then sitting in that meeting and just recognizing what the community issues are, and that the solution, part of it does have to be us as a school. I mean, I just won't ever forget Tim Carroll looking at Colden and I and John, we were all sitting together, and Joseph, and sort of looking from our group to Joseph and saying, you guys have a connection with these kids. What can we do? We're looking at you, what can we do? And we do, we have a connection with them, and that's what they need. And I know Brad, and I know Lauren, you guys both say this all the time. It's about providing a mentor, providing that connection. And it really is trying to do that very large scale and thinking that we're fulfilling something isn't working for this group. You know, we have advisories, we have crew time at the middle school, but this group needs way more than that. And they ask for that attention in a lot of different ways.
Correct.
So,
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think from there, it's just been, you know, we had to wait to find out about the grant, and then we've been waiting for a long time on the funding codes. And then we were like, we're not going to wait. We're just going to start spending money because we know we'll be reimbursed. So we finally got the funding codes. But anyways, all of that sort of happened at once between March and April.
And I hope that we can continue this in future years if the funding allows and if there's enough success. Also, I love your idea of providing them an opportunity to see MCST, because I feel like that can be a really nice intrinsic motivator to, hey, if you're able to keep those high attendance rates, because I know they have certain requirements for attendance there. They have these other opportunities. I think that could really spark a whole other level of learning. And maybe connected with that suggestion or that initiative, you know, at the end of the day, I know you have 15 minutes for cleaning and maybe you need all 15 minutes, but if you could do it in 10 minutes and have 5 minutes of reflection of the day, what did you learn? You know, what are some goals that you might be able to set because of these activities? What are some things that you know, did you have a moment of perseverance? Did you have a moment of building a new relationship or things like that, so they can reflect on their experiences that day and then hopefully bring them forward to the next day? I think that could be a really wonderful part of the program, particularly for this population of students. So I would just suggest, you know, potentially looking at that or building that into the schedule.
Yeah, and Lucas is quite skilled. He does that very naturally. He did ask the students that really at the end of each day, and Nadej just starts the morning circle by asking them to reflect as well. But it's interesting what they share, and I agree with you. That moment is so important because we had a student this afternoon who was a little angry that she had to clean up an area all by herself and her peers did not help her. She was very frustrated. And then volunteered to leave the classroom with me to go get the water because she needed to take a break. But she wasn't going to tell them that that was frustrating until we debriefed at the end, and then was actually willing to bring that up. So it's, you know, I think this might prevent a lot of future conflicts as well, if we can really practice saying what we feel, addressing an issue so that we can move on without, you know, feeling so angry and then not telling anybody that we're angry and having it explode at another time. So yes, I agree. I think that reflection is incredibly important. So the academic piece, they need that too. It's going to come over time. It's going to develop slowly, but it is really those social, emotional development pieces and goal setting and working on those habits for success that are the top priority for these first couple of weeks, even though they're the last couple of weeks of the school year.
Stephanie, first of all, yeah, it's awesome. It's really great. And the work that's gone into it. And also like Thomaston's awesome, clearly. As the Thomaston rep, I want to say that. I also am curious, so I've spent a lot of time in therapeutic programs. And one of the things that of course happens in the beginning of any new therapeutic program is the honeymoon phase, which is like, everything's working, everything's good, everybody's on board. And then they're like, it's still school and I still have to be here every day. And I still have feelings about that. And I'm curious if if anybody's just thought about that, like part of the piece that you said was about keeping folks busy and how that's really helpful. And I was thinking also like, yes, and also how exhausting that is for the adults to keep those kids busy and being like, and so I'm appreciating the term, like how many different people are coming in throughout the day so that not one, I mean, you know, and then also what might be ways to change it up continually as for these through these 8 weeks to keep it sort of dynamic, which I know is maybe not a totally sustainable model moving forward. And then as a therapeutic program, is Nick your therapeutic component that's coming in? Is he kind of the counseling piece?
Yes,
Okay.
Nick and Dej.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the
they're
last thing is, I was wondering, speaking about like reflection in the terms of not only reflection for the days, but I wonder if there's a way to ask, like, have them do like a reflection now about where they are when they're starting the program, and something that they can then reflect on in 8 weeks, so that they can really see and like have specific like areas of communication that maybe even correlate with things like perseverance or the social emotional goals. It's just so that there's a way for them to be like, yeah, when I got really frustrated, I learned how to communicate that instead of being resentful. And the consequence was, and that took time, because I think one of the things that happens for a lot of folks in this who are like experiencing some high level needs is like, they don't have perspective taking. They don't have time. They can't see over time how change happens. And that's a big piece that might be meaningful. Yeah. So,
That's a
but
great
yeah,
suggestion.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Also, I've been doing a lot of work with Maine Humanities Council this year, and every year they choose a big question. And everything they do floods through that lens of that big question. And this year, the big question is, what if we go on like this? It's pretty open-ended. And it might be interesting to have the students brainstorm their own big question.
Mm.
And then their reflections can kind of jump off of that and let it be student-centered, let them come up with their own big question. It might be helpful. And so that's just a suggestion. And my question is, what about parent guardian buy-in? How's that going?
It's good. So and thank you for the suggestion. I think that's a great idea. I didn't have a part in this, Golden, and Dej and Nick reached out to every family to get either verbal or written consent for them to join the program. We also need that consent in order to send these students on the field trips that, we're sort of just doing one blanket field trip form, but we're keeping them informed of what the schedule looks like. And I think the parents of these, or the families of these students, are appreciative. I think that they recognize that there aren't a lot of other options. These families are aware that their children either aren't attending school, and that's problematic because they don't have the tools and resources to get them there and force them to. And I think there's also a recognition of the struggle that's taken place with these students this year with the number of suspensions. Parents are contacted for all of those. Sometimes they're contacted during the day to come pick their child up. So they're aware, and I think that they're really appreciative that we've been able to come up with something to provide this chance.
That's great. Thank you.
I would think that the way that the middle school year is ending with these changes specifically, that it's probably providing a lot of hope for a lot of people for different reasons. Hope for the students involved and the staff involved and the student body at large and the staff at large. That it's just, as you talked about, it's going to benefit everybody. The next thing I wanted to ask is like capacity, especially once the modular is in, what do you think our capacity is for this population of 15, 16? I mean, because it may become a program that is hopefully really effective, and you all decide or students sign up for it because it's going to be has been really helpful. So what do you think capacity is like?
I think I would say, just being around this group, no more than 12. Just because the dynamics start to change, and with any group, any individual that you add is going to sort of add in a different dynamic.
Sure.
But I think the ultimate vision is, if we can, certainly we're going to maintain this style of program through next year, because that's part of the LD 756 funding, is to have a full-time alternative education teacher in addition to our current regular alternative education program. And that's for students who, you know, are still moving in and out of some of the classes within the building. So
Okay.
I'd like to maintain that and probably have about 5 in that program, which is about capacity,
Okay.
and have this other program and try to have them be step programs so that as soon as students are ready to move into this other program, we can shift them and start adding in some classes for them.
Yep.
And then in terms of what happens when the grant runs out, I was contacted on Friday by Senator King's office, and they notified us that we are potentially in the running to be receiving some congressionally appropriated funding, which I had applied for. I also applied under Senator Collins' office, and although I have not heard directly from them, Brad wrote us a wonderful letter, and Brad heard back from them, thanking, you know, just appreciation where, you know, things are moving along in the process. So I think between those two, I'm hopeful that we're able to receive some additional funding. In my phone call on Friday, one of the questions that I was asked is, you know, how would you move forward with longevity of this program when funding runs out? And ideally, what I'd like to do is the same thing we've been doing with the important positions under ESSER, is develop a plan for a phase-in so that we don't hit a cliff. I think we were really smart in the way that we did that with some of those ESSER positions. But I don't foresee being able to do that next year when we're using this $400,000 funding. Certainly that's not all positions that need to, you know, there's just a couple of positions under that umbrella. But next year's budget is the second phase-in of positions from ESSER. So that would be really complicated to try to do the juvenile grant phase-in and the rest of the ESSER positions. So if we were able to get one more year through either Collins or Senator King's congressionally appointed spending, that would be huge. That would
Okay.
buy us enough time that we could do a phase-in.
Okay. Good plan. Very good plan.
Do you need anything from us in terms of support with that funding, like reaching out to those offices or?
I'll keep you posted. I know that they've both said it's going to be a process. I have no idea what that process looks like. I
Slow.
hope it's not a process until next year.
Bureaucracy, yeah, debt
Well-
ceilings.
Yeah.
They have to decide who's gonna get what. There's a lot of politics in it. It'll take all next year to find out if we get something or not. Yeah.
Lauren, is it your understanding that some of that funding is attached to the Farm Bill?
I don't know.
Okay. I'd be
Good question.
interested to know if that was.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
They did say that funding wouldn't start until June of 2024, which is perfect for our current grant because that's when LD 756 runs out. And then we could pick right up and continue on. So I will keep my fingers crossed. And then Rebecca, I just wanted to get back to one of your points because you were asking, you know, in terms of the honeymoon period. I used to teach middle school. I'm well aware honeymoon period. I think we are in that right now. And I don't want to pretend everything is going to be perfect from here on out with OMS because I don't think that's the case. It's a middle school. I think we're going to have some ups and downs. I think we're going to definitely experience that within the program, but I did have a conversation with Janet, our special ed director, and she's going to send over a couple of BCBAs once we've got a little bit more of a process to give us some feedback on what's going to work well, what should we do to really support the positive behavior approaches with these students and see if there might be some individualized plans that we need to get started on sooner rather than waiting.
great. It seems to be really helpful too that everybody's able to communicate and provide a sort of almost wrap of services
Yeah.
in this program, which is, you know, yeah, makes a big difference.
The daily schedule for these 11 students, is it somewhat different than before or really different than before?
It's really different than before,
Okay.
partly because they're not having to move anyplace. And they're primarily the people that come into them, they're not losing, like right now, Lucas is sort of the head instructor for the program. He's still in there. They're building a relationship with him.
Right.
When an instructor comes in, he's still there, like their support. One of the things I've noticed with the kids, especially the ones that won't go to class, is I don't want to go because that person hates me.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very middle schoolish, but that's so important to the kids.
sure.
One
Yeah.
little thing may have happened and they never want to step foot back in that classroom again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now they don't have to go to a space. A service is going to come to them. They're
Yeah.
already with friends that they feel a comfort level with, and they're building this comfort level with this instructor. So it's a safer space, or at least we're trying to get it to feel that way. There are fewer classes, so we're going to be prioritizing, once we start some of the academic pieces, math, literacy, social studies. We're bringing in some of the health aspects in terms of what they want to work on for themselves. We'll be bringing in some of the PE in terms of rock climbing, and we'll be doing some walks outside. So it's not going to really look all that traditional.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a new program. Then it's a new location. It's a new instructor, and no pressure, Lucas, but it really is going to come down to Lucas and maintaining that kind of trust and affection between him and them, and them and each other. And I'm really hopeful. I've seen his work for a couple of years now. He does really good work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a last question, nobody in that program has an IEP, right? Or do you have kids with can kids with IEPs be in this alt ed program?
They can. It has to be part of their program.
Okay.
And that's another conversation that Janet and I had. So she's aware of any students that are currently in the program that have an IEP. There are very few, but we're making sure that we have their needs appropriately met.
It's
Well,
great.
it's 4:18. Time to look at the calendar and see when we want to meet again. It looks like the 22nd of May, or yes. Is it? Yeah, we have 5 Mondays in May.
Yeah. 22nd looks great.
So can
Work
we,
for everybody?
Stephanie, could you do an update for us on this particular project on that date as well?
Sure.
To know,
Yeah.
how things are going.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that.
And when you give your report at the board meeting, are you going to just go over the bones of this? Or do you need me to say something about it? I'd like to hand off to you. You know it so well.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It sort of has been my life since the last board meeting. I don't know. I mean, the other stuff that I'm managing is kind of boring. It's grants. It's
Don't
it's
hear
not that
earmuffs, John,
exciting.
earmuffs. Nothing about Stephanie's job is boring, earmuffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And then I would really like to physically come to the board meeting this time. If maybe Lauren, you could pick me up. I don't have a ride. I can come if I don't have to drive there because I can't drive.
Yeah.
So if you could pick me up and bring me back home.
Yeah. Just text me and I'll do it.
Okay, great.
Text me to remind me and I will make time, create the
Good,
time.
because I would like to actually be in a room with my colleagues. It's been a little lonely here.
Yeah. Well, that'd be good for us
2
too.
weeks till my surgery, 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that would be great.
Yep. And Stephanie, I think that your condensed sort of version of this to the full board is exactly the kind of stuff they need to hear as well. Because it's potentially very good news. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of great vision, and like I said before, there's a lot of hope for all different populations involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I will. And I think I can center my report around, starting something new, to having this fresh start. See if they can come up with a name for it by Wednesday. We did tell them that they need to name it. Right now, we keep calling it the program. But I've got some pictures of the space that I would love to share too, just so that you guys can see how it's come together and what it looks like. The paint is not, perfect. We're working on our painting skills too, but everything is a work in progress.
As it should be.
Perfectionism is not what we're going for.
That's
We don't-
right.
Yeah,
Nope,
perfectionism is killer.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, then. Thank you, Stephanie, and our very silent superintendent, and everybody else for being here today. And
Well, it's hard to be to top anything that Stephanie said.
agree with you.
I got Bruce. I can beat Bruce, but Stephanie, no.
I couldn't take any one of you at this point.
Oh, they know I'm kidding. They know I'm kidding. I love them both for different reasons.
So I will send out the meeting invite, just a placeholder on your calendars for May 22nd at 3:15.
Okay,
Like a plan, Stan.
All right, great. Thank you,
thank you,
everybody.
thank you all.
Everyone, thank you.
See ya.
Take care.